I was a poor college student. I worked part-time at, of all places, Outback Steakhouse in Australia. Yeah.
Welcome to another episode of Chewing the Fat. I am your host, Big Rob. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for the likes, the follows, and I can't say thank you enough for the coffees that you bought me at chewingthefatbr.com. Thank you so much. It really does mean a lot that you are getting something out of this podcast. It is one of the things I am truly thankful for as we are doing some thankfulness episodes this month as we get closer to the Thanksgiving holiday. I am thankful for friendship, and especially this one gentleman that we have on the line right now, joining us from Boise, Idaho, John Hosmer.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, John. How are you doing, buddy?
Good, man. It's been a few years, hasn't it? I think the last time I was in Augusta was, I've been in Boise now for over 4 years. Yeah. So it's been 4.5 years.
Wow.
The last time I was there, I think we caught up because I just got back from Morocco. So it's a pretty big life transition right then.
Yeah. John and I worked together in retail, and you had moved to Augusta from, was Augusta
Portland.
first? Where was it?
Portland.
Okay. Yeah. And let me just be real honest with you about this. When they showed the commercials about like the most interesting man, John was always my most interesting man because he has traveled more, seen more stuff, done more things than I can scarcely imagine. So I loved sitting, just listening to you tell tales of the places you've been. And that's one reason why I wanted to have you here.
Thanks, man. Yeah. North Augusta is home. I wasn't born there, but I was raised there. So I spent a lot of years, right around the corner from you. So it doesn't feel as much like home anymore, but
right.
Yeah, there's still some roots there for sure.
Yeah, that is so cool. So, so you left from Augusta and you went to Boise. And so that was the direct. So that's where you've been the last 4 years.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No moves. Hopefully, I'm hoping I'm done with interstate or national moves for a while. It's hard for me to ever say someplace I'll be somewhere forever at this point in my life. I always want to keep the door open to, who knows? You just never know what opportunities, what doors might open. But Boise's a really great place. I've always loved the mountains. Living in Portland, as much as I loved Portland, it's a wild place, man. It is. The traffic is crazy. It's super expensive. But the food is amazing. The sea, you're an hour from the beach, you're an hour from the mountains,
right.
But that's why everybody moves there. That's why it's so expensive. And Boise is kind of, it used to be the more affordable one. It's not quite as affordable as it used to be.
Oh, wow.
But it has a lot of, we've got mountains. We've got, if you like being outside, year round, there's so much to do here. We've got a big ski slope that's 45 minutes. It literally looks over Boise. You can see it lit up at night from a long way off. And we've got a river that goes right through downtown that everybody floats down in the summer. It's lots of hiking. It's like an outdoors person's paradise.
Yeah, and if the Boise Visitors and Conventions Bureau is not listening to that, I need to make sure I tag them for that, because that is a stellar job of pushing the high points of Boise. Have you always been that type of adventurous spirit, even when you were a kid and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think as a kid, I was actually pretty cautious.
Really?
I was very much a rule follower. I was raised very religiously, and I think that upbringing informed a lot of the rule following. I think I'm trying to think of what flipped that switch for me. And I remember being in it was sometime right after graduating from high school. You're trying to figure out what you want to do with your life. Right. Who are you? What's the future going to look like? You're really developing a self
for sure.
at that point. And my early 20s, I remember even as a kid, I had heard about the Appalachian Trail. And it just was something that had always stuck in my mind that I thought was really cool. I didn't really know anything about it. I just knew it was a really long hiking trail. And it just seemed cool. And early 20s, I had a pretty good job working. I was actually working for the city of North Augusta. And I was a kid, essentially. I still lived at home. And so I had this money. And I was going, well, what do I do? And I went, I want to go backpacking. I can't tell you what sparked the idea. I think I was about 21 and I want to go backpacking. And so I started researching it and looking into gear and figuring things out. And I spent months and months planning it and didn't plan the timing of it very well. I decided to start, I was only going to be doing it was probably a 6-day hike, but I wanted to start at the very, very beginning of the AT, the Appalachian Trail, and thought, well, why don't I go the day after Thanksgiving? I'll start on Black Friday. And thinking, it's the South. How cold is North Augusta the day after Thanksgiving? You probably need to wear pants, maybe a light jacket. But it's really not too bad. Well, the North Georgia mountains get significantly colder than North Augusta did the day after Thanksgiving. So I started my trip that day, and I think probably my second day it started raining, and by the fourth day it was dumping snow. It shows how well I researched it. All of my clothes were cotton. I had bought I thought pockets were more important than material. So I had bought some cheap pants at Walmart that just had a bunch of pockets. And then I hiked through the rain for 2 days straight, and which had then turned into snow, and my clothes literally froze on me.
Oh, wow.
Because I had some layers on. So, I wasn't going to frostbitten or anything, because we're not talking negative temperatures. It was probably high 20s or something like that. I mean, which is still cold.
Still
don't get me wrong, but that was, surprisingly enough, that was really the thing that I think flipped my adventure switch. Everything went wrong. I mean, everything went wrong. But there was this feeling of the day it started snowing. It started snowing while I was still asleep, and I had my biggest day that next morning that I had to start, and it was going to be 15 miles, and it snowed the entire time. I mean, it probably snowed 6 inches, and to be in I pushed myself to a limit that I didn't know that I had. But when you're out there and there's nothing you can do, there is no tap out. There is no quitting. There's no roads. You just have to keep going. And putting yourself in a position where it's a cliche, but quitting was legitimately not an option, because I mean, what do? I just stop for a little while. I still have to get up and I had 50 pounds of gear on my back. I just had to keep going, and getting to the end of that and looking back and going, holy shit, I did it and I'm okay. I was cold and I was miserable in the moment, but that high of, I just survived this really difficult thing. It gave me a lot of confidence to push myself into some places that people might be afraid to go. And I think ultimately that's what led to, maybe we'll touch on this in a little bit, but moving to Australia a few years later, packing up my life, selling everything, and just going for it, just trying. And that worked super well. Didn't work so well when I tried it with Morocco, but also I go, okay, once you've lost everything, you go, well, whatever, we'll start over.
Yeah, for sure. And so for folks who don't know, where does the AT Trail start at then? Where did you get on it?
Yeah, it starts in North Georgia. I don't remember the name. There's kind of, interestingly, there's kind of several starting locations. You can start in North Georgia, or you can start in Maine. So it depends on if you want to go northbound or southbound. And then you start at a different time. So I started in Georgia, obviously, but there's also the official Appalachian Trail starts literally on top of a mountain. again, I don't remember the name of it, which makes me feel like a bad hiker, but it's, there's an approach trail as well that starts at Amicalola Falls, which I believe is one of the tallest waterfalls in Georgia. I'm just beautiful. So I wanted to do, I'm one of those who, like if I play a video game, I want to do everything. I need to 100% complete clear.
Right.
And I felt like with Appalachian Trail, I had to go, okay, I have to do the approach trail too, which meant the very first thing we did was like about 750 steps to the top of that waterfall. And then we were actually in the dirt. So, yeah, it's a very complicated answer to what should be a pretty simple question.
No. I mean, as someone who is not an outdoorsy necessarily type person, although I did hike part of the Appalachian Trail. We some folks from work got together. Actually, it was last year. Everybody was, had tested and was negative and things like that. And some of the guys we got a cabin up in Blue Ridge, Georgia, and about 20 or 30 miles away, there was an easy hike. Because again, being a 400-pound person, hiking is not high on my list of things to do. Probably should be, but it's not. And and it was a short hike. It was like only a mile in to a waterfall. Yeah. So there was like a goal. There was, you know what I mean, and it was easy access. But it crossed over a part of the AT Trail. I can't remember the name of the part that it crossed over through there, but it was like. We took pictures by the AT Trail sign. I was like, "Hey, we're actually we hiked this much, about 4 inches of the AT Trail. We hiked it, yay!" So
that's amazing.
But just beautiful, and I can see the attraction of that in the quietness, and I mean, we went in like September, so September in the South might as well be July in the South. You know what I mean? It's still warm, but you're in the canopy, shaded the whole time, and it was just great.
Even that little bit of elevation, it cools things down a little bit. It's like you said, it's still September in Georgia, but the mountains are there's just something different about them.
Yeah. And I've always been a mountain fan. Like, people are, usually polarized beach people or mountain people. I've always been a mountain person.
Same.
Because I don't know what's in the water. I don't want it touching me. At least if a bear is coming, I can see it and like, well, okay, it's not a surprise.
Right. Well, and I feel like for the beach, there's so many different levels of beach. And, Myrtle Beach, Hilton Head, it's fine. I understand why people love it, but I feel like I don't live there anymore, so I didn't want to be too abrasive about it. But when you've seen, don't get me wrong, Pacific Coast beaches, the Oregon coast is not a swimming beach. It is beautiful, but it is not a beach for the water. That is a beach where you are in your hoodies and you're bundled up. But if I'm going to go to the beach, I was in Belize this time about 2 months ago. Like that is where I'm okay with the beach.
Right. Yeah. And when I worked in Birmingham, we'd go down to Pensacola, Florida. So you're in the Gulf. The Gulf beach is completely different than any Atlantic beach at all. I mean, where you have that white sand, you have that turquoise water, and it was gorgeous. And of course, we took a trip too many years ago now to Maui and to see the beaches that are there. Yeah. Those are beaches you just kind of stand on and look in awe and soak that in for sure.
Even in Belize, we stayed in these little cabanas in this kind of tucked away area. We weren't on the mainland. It's not technically an island. It's in an area called San Pedro. And when you get in the water, it was bath temperature. So it was super warm and there was just fish everywhere. So you've just got all these tropical fish swimming around you. And that is that's a better beach experience for me than, hanging out at Hilton Head
Tybee Island or something for sure.
Right.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. You did mention about living in Australia for a while. There's some weird stuff that goes on, and animals and creatures, and great white sharks and things like that in Australia. How did you get to Australia?
Yeah, it's kind of going back to that, what I mentioned a few minutes ago about kind of that sense of putting yourself in a situation where you don't really know what's going to happen, but there's not a real easy eject button either. I think that a lot of times we create these like escape routes for ourselves. If things get a little bit too uncomfortable, or if it's a little bit too scary, I can go back to what I'm comfortable with. And I think there's something to be said for putting yourself into a position that you can't get out of, not as easily, because it kind of forces you to see it through, at least to some degree. You can't try it out for 4 days and then go, hey, this isn't for me. Even with hiking, after that 6-day hike, I could have said, oh, I don't think this is my thing, and not do it again. But yeah, I was really still kind of unsure of what I wanted to do with my life. I was still very religious at the time, and I decided to go to a school down there that would really let me get involved with some of the music stuff that I had been doing. It was really aligned with like my religious beliefs at the time. And this was the summer of 2010. So, I mean, it's been almost 11 and a half years ago at this point. I was 25, single, just trying to kind of figure my way out. And this school it just kind of created it gave me the reason to go, if you will. It's a lot harder to just say, well, I want to move to another country when you don't have a job, you don't have a community, you don't know the culture, any of those things. Like, moving someplace where you don't have to learn a new language made things a lot easier. And then having school was the purpose. They organized my housing. It was inbuilt community. Oh, wow. It was, in a sense, it was a kind of an easy move. Even though it was a big move, it wasn't an overly difficult move. And yeah, it was tough, but I thought I'd be there for a year, maybe 2, and ended up staying for about 4.5. And that was in the same way that hiking the AT really kind of created that sense of I wanted to explore more. It kind of opened my eyes. I imagine even when you were out there was that sense of you get to that waterfall and you go, oh my God, this you can't just pull off to the side of the road to find this kind of thing. You have to go look for it. And so what that, I think ultimately the kind of the common theme through all of it is that sense of like experiencing life is like, I kind of like cracked something open inside of myself that went, there's a lot of life out there to experience, and I want to experience as much of it as I possibly can. The good, the bad, whatever. I want to experience it. And I remember planning that trip and preparing for it. I prepared for over a year. I remember getting down there and realizing that I had kind of maybe some of the people that were on staff at the school were like, oh, you're John Hosmer. I was like, oh, I was probably kind of annoying you guys, wasn't I? Because I had a lot of questions. But I got down there and realized that kind of like really opened that crack up a lot, because it went, oh, I'm not the guy who moves to another country on the other side of the world. That just wasn't me. So I grew up in a small town. I worked for a Parks and Rec department. Not that there's nothing wrong with any of those things, but I didn't think I was the guy who was going to do the things that I was doing. Yeah. And then I got there and I went, I can be whoever I want to be. And not in the sense of like, let me try out different personalities, but as I'm sure you get it, when you stay in the place that you were raised, there's a lot of expectations on who you are. And those expectations may not always line up really well with who you think you are, but it's really hard to push out of those boundaries, because suddenly it might start costing you friendships or family relationships. There can be a really high cost to being true to your authentic self, and moving like that actually kind of gave me a clean slate to just be the person that I wanted to be. And it wasn't that I'm embarrassed of who I was, but I just didn't feel like I was truly who John was meant to be. And that that clean slate let me you get to start being a lot more careful. It's like moving into a new house. You can kind of go, wow, I really didn't like these things about my other house. I'm going to be a lot more careful. I'm going to really think about the paint colors I want to use. And I'm going to think about the layout or the theme I want to have in this house. And that's the approach I took with who John was becoming. Because really, we're always changing, or we should be. We should always be growing. And that just gave me that chance to really experiment with that, and learning that this overseas travel thing wasn't as scary as I thought it was going to be. Right. And I started I remember after a couple of years being down there, I was still really into backpacking and hiking. So I was camping a lot. And I planned another hiking trip that was going to be solo. I wasn't going to go with anybody. I was going to do it on my own. And it was in Tasmania, which is a state of Australia, but it's island. So it's off the very southeastern coast. It's pretty close to New Zealand, just in terms of latitude and longitude and all those things. But yeah, I did that alone. And I was down there for about 10 days and I planned it all out. The hike itself was only about 7 days, but I remember that was another one of those moments in my life that I remember finishing that hike, and I had spent nights completely alone. There was no one else in the shelter. And that's a really unique experience to be on an island south of Australia in the middle of the wilderness with nobody. The silence and the quiet. There's just nothing like it, and all of those things, they just kept building up confidence. And then I went, well, shoot, if I did that, where do I want to go next? And so I just started planning trips, and, I went to Europe and I went to Dubai, and I was a poor college student. I worked part-time at, of all places, Outback Steakhouse in Australia. It was not started in Australia. It started in Florida, which seems very appropriate for some reason. But that, just being a server and a waiter part-time, I was able to save enough and live cheap and take trips and go see things and experience things. And again, I did it cheap. I was crashing on couches and all of those kind of things. But at this point, I've done enough of those trips that I don't even think about it. If I see a good deal, COVID has kind of shifted some of that a little bit because it's not as easy to just, there's a lot more considerations, but it just removed a lot of the fear. You start to realize, again, it's cliche, but people are just people everywhere you go. That you're gonna run into rude people, and you're gonna run into people who want to scam you. But you're also going to run into a lot of really nice people who are going to go out of their way to help you so that you can experience their culture in a really positive way.
And as you were talking about being able to discover yourself, I totally understand what you mean by when you're in that place and you don't go beyond the borders of the town or whatever. It's like you've stunted yourself, you've pigeonholed yourself, or you've allowed other people to pigeonhole you into what the expectations of you are. I've worked at places like that where you start on one level and you've worked your way up, but because of people that was there when you started at the bottom level, they always think of you at that, that lowest rung. They can never give you credit for the work you've done to advance yourself. So sometimes you just have to leave, go somewhere else where they don't know you, and they bring you in at that level that you've worked for. And then you can keep going from there, and it's amazing to see that type of even just respect that you start to have for yourself because you look at yourself in a different light.
Totally. Yeah. It's just and I don't even think it's clearly not a conscious thing that any of us do, but when you just stay in the same place that you've always been, this is exactly what happened to me. Is I didn't know that there was other things. I kind of thought everything was just pretty similar everywhere until you get out and you start going, oh, there's no Chick-fil-A in Australia. How am I supposed to stay here? I literally had my mom send me Chick-fil-A sauce because I loved it so much. Yeah. But you just don't know. You don't know what you don't know. And that's okay. And I'm really passionate about trying to push people to experience new things because it doesn't just have a tiny impact. It changes so much of your worldview and how you see life and how you experience life and what you want from life. And I think that it can create a little bit of discontentment sometimes, but I think that can be good because that pushes you to do more and to build more and to not be complacent.
Right.
Yeah.
To take more chances to,
right.
if you see something within you or something within your circle that's annoying you constantly, it's like, okay, I'm going to need to remove that because I want to put something else in there. It's a maturity too. You've grown literally,
Yeah. There's almost a sense of, I think back when we did work together, there were certain metrics that we had to meet. And if I was at 100% on those metrics, it just made me nervous because I was trying to maintain this level of, perfection essentially. And so I put more and more pressure on myself to maintain that. And as soon as you got the one thing that knocked you down a little bit, all of that pressure came off because I went, oh, okay, well, I'm not at 100% anymore. As long as I'm over where I need to be, we're good.
Yeah, because statistically, I can't get back to 100 now, during
so
this quarter or whatever. Right.
Exactly. I don't have to put that pressure on myself because I've already not been at 100%. So even if I'm at 100% for the rest of the time, the best I'm going to get to is 99%.
Right.
And I kind of think that we all need to get knocked down to not 100
right
pretty regularly. Failing is really good for us because if you never fail, you're never going to change. You're never going to grow. And I think that, that goes back to what you're talking about with maturity. It's very hard to grow and mature if you don't have any bumps and if you don't have anything really just catastrophically fail. As miserable as it is when you're in the middle of it, the growth on the other side of those failures, I can't say enough about it.
Yeah. And, and I'll say this from a different perspective, as a father whose son just got married and is now living in Plint, England, outside of Loo in Cornwall, and that he moved to marry and he's been gone for, 3 months now. And I love him and I love Holly and, their marriage, I hope lasts, a million years. But it's so scary as a father because we want to smooth those roads. We want to, those bumps that I ran into, I don't want him to have to deal with that stuff. And when he doesn't listen, it's like, if you would just listen, you could avoid this thing. But, so I'm having to come to grips with what you're saying, that, you're right. There are times that you can only learn the lesson when it's you learning the lesson,
Yeah.
And, it's one of those things for that muscle to grow, it's got to be strained. It's got to be, allowed to relax some too. Those rest days, you've got to give it some time to recover and then it can grow back stronger. And that's as a father, that's a hard thing for me to let go of and let
go.
Yeah. But yeah, but I 100% agree with you. It is one of those things where you've got to see the world. As I get older, I realize I've got more years behind me than I have in front of me, statistically. Having just turned 49, it's statistically probably not going to be 98. So, so what am I doing to make the most of those hours, minutes, moments that I have left?
Yeah, that's something I haven't necessarily thought of it in those terms. Maybe because I'm 36, so hopefully I have more years in front of me than I have behind me.
You probably do.
I've thought a lot about my deathbed. I shouldn't say a lot, but I filter a lot of things through that of going, is this going to be important or meaningful on my deathbed? What am I going to wish I would have done more of?
Yeah.
And one of those answers that I always go back to is, am I going to regret that I spent the money on a plane ticket or am I going to regret that I didn't go to the place?
Wow.
I don't think I'm going to remember the money on my deathbed, I'm going to my goal is to be able to look back on my life with just such a sense of fullness and to go, it all didn't work out. I had a lot of things fall apart, but I fucking tried. At the end of the day, that's all that I can say is I gave it everything that I had, and I took the chances and I took the risks. And, like Indiana Jones, sometimes I stepped out into nothing and I fell hard. But sometimes there was something there. And I've learned that even after a really hard fall, I've lost everything several times. And I'm still a happy guy most of the time. And I've been able to recover. It's just money at the end of the day. And I know that's something that can kind of be said out of a place of privilege, because some people really are wondering where their next meal is going to come from or how they're going to pay rent. I've been there where I had less than $100 in the bank, didn't know how I was going to pay rent, didn't know how I was going to get food. And, I buckled down and I figured it out, and I had a little bit of help from a girlfriend or whatever it may have been. But, you can make it happen. And those tough times can really, they can really birth a lot of strength.
So John, this is the second segment of the show. This is where we start to talk a little bit more about you personally in your journey as someone who deals with depression, anxiety, down days. Some days are not as bad as others. It's something I think it's important that we talk about and have conversations about to get rid of some of that stigma of those things of mental health. So I always like to ask guests, what do you do to stay positive, and how do you keep the dark at bay?
Yeah, I think I love that that's such a focal point of your life and the whole point of the podcast. I think it is really important. And, I think on one level, I don't mean this in any kind of contradictory way, but I don't think that staying positive is actually always the right thing. I think something that has actually really, really helped me over the years, without getting into a bunch of detail, I went through a divorce after getting cheated on. I lost my faith. I've lost, the move to Morocco. I lost everything coming back from that because of some false promises along the way. And I think through some of those things, I tried to stay really, really positive. And I think what I found was that was really repressing a lot of very valid feelings and emotions. And when I started giving myself permission to feel whatever I was feeling, there was a lot of freedom in that. Now that you can't stop there, because to your point, like, how do you keep the darkness at bay? We have times of darkness no matter what we do. And a regular day, and up here in Idaho, it gets dark real early. It's real. I mean, the flip side is we have really long summer nights. It doesn't get dark until after 10, which is amazing. But winters, there's a lot of darkness. And I think we need to acknowledge that darkness is real and that it exists. And ignoring it or whatever is really going to come back to bite you. So I do encourage people to feel what they feel, but don't stop there. You want to, I think, to keep that at bay, you find those healthy habits. There's a lot of different things. I think if you've only got one thing that you can go to, that can be hard as well. I encourage a lot of people to find those things that give you life, whatever it might be. As I was last year going through the divorce in the midst of a pandemic, in the midst of losing my faith, it was really hard to know who I was. I talked 20 minutes ago or whatever about really rebuilding a sense of self. I had that blank slate, and a lot of the things I had rebuilt got ripped out from under me. So I was kind of at a blank slate again going, and that was really depressing because I had worked really, really hard. I had moved and sacrificed, and I had given up a lot of opportunities. I mean, even when we worked together, there was a lot of opportunities that I passed on because I had my eyes so set on where I thought I was going to be going with my life. And I don't regret that I pursued that path as passionately as I did, but none of it worked out. It literally all failed. And that was a really dark time. And excuse me, I think at some point one of the things that really stands out is I just got tired of being so sad. And I got really tired of just what my life was looking like. I felt like I didn't have any control. There was a lot of things that were happening that were way outside of my control. And I started trying to take some of that control back in little ways. I had been gaining weight because we were in lockdown. What else are you going to do? I was drinking wine, and I was eating snacks, and I was just watching TV and playing video games all the time. And I was just tired of my clothes being tight because we were starting to go back into the office. This is, a lot of this started happening probably, last summer of 2020 is when a lot of the things started kind of falling apart. And there was something in my mind that just flipped because I knew I was depressed. And I wasn't motivated. And I didn't care about anything. My job, I work in corporate recruiting. So what a great career to be in the midst of a huge recession when nobody wants to hire. My job was, I wasn't doing well there, through no fault of my own, but I still was not being successful in my career. My marriage was failing. I wasn't healthy. I just didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know who I was. And I just started going, I've got to find something that makes me happy. And I just started trying things. First thing I tried was, football season was just starting. And I was like, maybe I should try to get into sports. Maybe that's a community that I can engage in. And I tried, and I just went, I just don't care. It's fine. I'm pumped. The Braves won the World Series. Super pumped. Didn't watch a single game.
Right.
Haven't watched a game, and I don't know how long. And I think that was another thing of giving myself permission to also quit something. I think that there's so much to be said for determination. What I talked about with the hike of quitting wasn't an option, but quitting is a viable option for a lot of things. And I don't think we should hold ourselves too tightly to certain things. There's obviously things that we do need to hold on to, but I think most things should be up for conversation at the very least about quitting. And so I just went, fuck it. If I don't like football, I'm not going to watch football. That's fine. I don't have to, there's not something wrong with me because I don't like football, but I realized I watch cooking shows all the time. I was like, why am I not trying to cook? I should try to cook some of these things I see. So I started doing that. And that was like a little glimmer of light because I was going, I'm getting better at this, and I'm learning about it, and I'm starting to understand it. And that was a really amazing thing for me because we have to cook. And rather than just like throwing a frozen pizza in the oven every night, I still do that occasionally. There's nothing wrong with the frozen pizza. But I wanted more, and I wanted to experiment. That's part of the reason I travel as much as I do is I love food, and I love trying new food and different things and experimenting with it on all sorts of levels. And so that was that little glimmer of light that started to help kind of keep the darkness at bay. But then at the same time, I had this divorce looming. I knew that my marriage was ending, and I was going, shit, I'm gonna have to start dating again. How am I going to do this? So I went, I need to get myself like together. And so I started going to the gym again. I very consciously did not start dieting because I decided I wanted to change my lifestyle. I didn't want a quick fix. So I just stopped drinking a bottle of wine every day and started just drinking less than that, maybe it was still 2 glasses or whatever. And I just said, you know what, I want to be in the gym 3 days a week. Sometimes we kind of all have that vision of what we see as success. And I went, why am I was just waiting for success to like fall in my lap instead of creating it for myself. So I started going, the people that I look at and admire, they take care of themselves and they dress well and they're in the gym. They've organized their life to where they can exercise several days a week and they prioritize that. And I went, I want to be the guy that's in the gym. I don't have to be the biggest. I don't have to be the strongest. I don't need a six pack. I just want to be healthier and stronger. And that with the cooking and those kinds of things really started making a difference. And I think it was that routine because you don't see results right away. I wasn't a great cook immediately. I didn't lose 20 pounds overnight. It was a lot of effort and time, but the consistency made such a big difference because even if you're having a really shit day, if you're consistent with whatever your darkness pusher is, it will eventually make a difference. And because you have that foundation of those habits to fall back on. And for me, if I was having a really bad day at work and everything was going wrong, I got to that point where I could go, I just need to go to the gym, not because I love it, but because it's who I am and it's what I do. And after several months of that, the gym has become a place for me that is life-giving and it does make me feel better. And I've had a crazy work week this week and I'm in the process of getting a new car because my old car died. So I haven't been able to go this week and I genuinely miss it. I was literally on my way out the door to go today and I just went, I literally just don't have the time for this. I cannot get away from this. And where I was a year and a half ago, it didn't take any effort to make an excuse to not go do something. So I think whatever that looks like for somebody, I think it's just really important to find those things. And there's more things that I do. I could probably talk for hours about some of this, but I think that finding what works for you and having a light at the end of the tunnel, I cannot stress how important that is. If it's a vacation, if you're taking a couple of days off from work, if it's a new video game coming out, if it's a movie, you've got to give yourself markers along the way that you can go, hey, this is going to be a day when I can just completely disconnect. That was my Belize trip that I took a couple of months ago. It was mid-September. I booked it probably end of March, early April. And there was just a lot of really hard things that I had to work through this year. And I was millimeters away from canceling that trip. And I just went, no, I have to go do something for myself. And I can't say enough for how life-giving, and it just recharged me. And I was just so prepared to come dive back into the nitty-gritty of life. Really healthy habits, which look different for everybody, a light at the end of the tunnel for those markers of progress and that consistency. And I mean, really, I'd say the last thing that I've really been focusing on, I've been reading a book that I recommend to everybody now called The Wise Heart. And it's a lot about like learning to be compassionate with yourself and it's a lot about mindfulness and things like that. And, it's just made me very conscious of the energy that I'm putting out. I'm not really into like The Secret, but I do also, because I don't necessarily think you can just manifest whatever you want in your life, but I do believe in the law of attraction, not because you're necessarily, maybe to some level you are attracting those things, but I think when you are in a healthy, positive mindset, it makes you more aware of the good things that are happening. And when you're in a negative mindset, you're more aware of the negative. Both are happening all the time, but our brains we can only take in so much data at one point. So if you're in a really negative mind space, then your brain is going, oh, this is what they're focusing on, so this is what must be important. So it's going to highlight all of the shitty things that are happening in your life. But if you can really push towards, and it's hard, and I have to do it over and over every day, I am just consciously telling myself I'm putting out happy vibes. That is I'm just putting out happiness because that's the goal. And It doesn't always feel like it, but the more you do it, the more you're conditioning your brain to go, no, let's focus on, show me more positive. I want to see more good things that are happening. And it slowly is becoming habitual. And I'm slowly noticing a real shift in some of my moods, or not that I don't have really shitty days, but I can bounce back from them so much faster because the conditioning and the consistency. I'd say those are the things.
That's kind of like the, people talk about the algorithm in like Instagram and stuff like that. Yeah. The more you put in your search bar, the more things that come up that they're suggesting to you. So if you're searching for negative things, it's going to suggest, your brain's going to suggest more negative things to you. If you're searching more positive things, it's going to present more positive things to you.
And even just with that example, if you think of an algorithm, the more you think about it on Instagram, like the more time you spend looking at something, even if you don't like it, the more time you spend scrolling through those, the more of those things that you're going to see. So the more time we're spending focusing on the bad things are real. This is by no means toxic positivity saying just put a happy face on and everything will be okay. But it's that of going, this is real. The Wise Heart, they talk about pain is unavoidable, but suffering is avoidable. You do not have to sit in suffering. I can't control the things that have happened to me that have been really traumatizing and painful, but I can control my response to those things. And sometimes my response just needed to be sitting at home, weeping and sobbing for what I had lost. But sometimes it looked like going to the gym. Sometimes it looked like, who knows what, taking my dog for a walk, whatever it was. So I think that those are important. Again, don't just ignore it, but that's not the end of the story. There can be more.
All right, John, this is now the third segment of the show. A lot of folks like this segment as their favorite. A lot of people get stressed out about it, but it's time now for the Fast Five, Fast Five, Fast Five, Fast Five. It's a Fast Five. Sorry, I don't have a theme song for that yet. I'm still working on it.
No, you do. You just sang it.
Workshops and stuff. But it's the Fast Five, powered by Pod Decks. They are great decks of cards that have conversation starters in them. There's an app as well that you can find in your app store. Made for podcasters by my friend Travis Brown. But they're, like I said, they're great conversation starters. If you're getting together with some folks for the holidays and stuff like that, bring out a deck of Pod Decks. Ask some questions. Get to know some folks. As a matter of fact, if you go to chewingthefatbr.com/poddecks, you can use promo code CHEW, get 10% off your decks. All right. No wrong answers. Here we go. Question number 1. What's the best movie you ever saw on a plane?
Bridesmaids.
Yes.
First time I ever saw that movie was on a plane, and it was like an overnight flight, and I had to literally hold my hand over my mouth because I was laughing so hard that I was worried I was going to wake up all of the people who were sleeping around me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That would be a great, and of course there's the scene where they're on the plane and she's convinced about the federal marshal and all like that. Yeah. Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah. And I mean, when they were trying on the dresses and Maya Rudolph is in the middle, I mean, I just dead. I was dead.
Is this happening? This is happening.
Yeah. She's shitting in the street.
Yeah. All right. Question number 2. You're given one wish, but you can't use it on yourself. What would you wish for?
Oh, what a good question. You always want I wish for more wishes. Truthfully though, I would genuinely wish, that I wouldn't even know how to say it, but just for an end to suffering, world hunger, the lack of access to water, the just insane amounts of poverty. We've got these fucking assholes taking themselves to space when they could be like solving humanitarian crises that are all over the world. If I could do that would be it.
That's a very noble wish for sure, to end suffering for sure. All right, number 3. Cake or pie?
Pie.
What kind?
Too easy.
What kind?
So something I'm going to introduce you to. Have you ever heard of a Marionberry?
I think so. He was the mayor of Washington, D.C., right?
Maybe, but this is an actual berry I'm talking about. I don't want a people pie. But yeah, so Marionberries they're the only place I've ever seen them in my life is Oregon and Washington. There's something about the climate up here that just, even Idaho, I don't know if they grow here super well because we're high desert. But a Marionberry pie, unbeatable. It's like I think it was a berry that was like bread. Is that the right word for what you do with fruit? But created from, it was either blueberries or blackberries. I think it was blackberries, but just best pie I've ever had in my life. There's an ice cream company called Tillamook. They're like cheese, ice cream, all of that. They make a Marionberry. Yeah. You probably see the cheese, but their ice cream doesn't really come past the Midwest. Tillamook is a town in Oregon, right on the Oregon coast. You can go to the factory and like try everything, but they make a Marionberry pie ice cream that has like chunks of the Marionberries and then pie crust.
All right.
Best thing in the world.
All right, I'm gonna have to go online and see if they ship that stuff or something like that. Right,
try it. It is life changing.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Marionberry pie. I'm gonna have to try to see if I can find some Marionberries. Yeah. All right. Question number 4. And we're talking more food here. Have you ever traveled somewhere just for the food?
No, I don't think I've traveled only for the food. But the food is always a reason for me to travel. Yeah, but like I have like Japan as a place that I really want to go for sushi. And so I try, whenever I do travel, I try to really, really lean into whatever the cultural food is. Like in Chile, I ate like ceviche and things like that, really fresh fish and fresh made. Belize, I was only drinking like local beer and trying whatever. I went on a food tour that was all of the local stops. So I love trying local food, but I think it's, not specifically for that yet.
Not yet, but Japan and sushi is on the bucket list.
It's up there. There's probably other. I really want to go to one of Gordon Ramsay's restaurants.
Oh wow!
and just try some of his food, especially his beef Wellington. I've just been watching that guy for so much of my life. But I mean, that doesn't really feel like it counts because I can just go to Vegas to eat at a Ramsay restaurant.
Yeah, but I mean, I feel like there'd probably be something different if you went to one of his places, in the UK or something like that.
Right. I would want it to be a real experience.
That's awesome. All right. And question number 5. If someone made a movie about your life, who would play you? I always say this in 2 parts. It's like, who do you think would actually get cast to play you, and who would you like to play you?
Yeah, Chris Pratt would probably do my voice if it was an animated movie because he seems to just be the go-to guy for animated movies at this point. Gosh, that's such an interesting question because I don't feel like there's not really any celebrities that I've ever thought I haven't really been compared to any. So I'm really not sure. That's maybe Oscar Isaac.
Oh yeah.
Maybe the beard. I like. He is my beard goals. So I would hope that like maybe he would play like John in his 50s.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that's what I'm going to stick with.
That's a good one. Yeah. I mean, because he's got that amazing beard in Dune that's out now. Yeah. And
he's a little bit serious. I think that might be it.
But also, if you've not gone on YouTube and searched for Oscar Isaac singing, he sings great.
Really?
Don't know if you knew that or not. He sings great.
No.
And this song lives rent-free in my brain right now. He was on Fallon, and he has a Hippopotamus song that he sang for his, I think it was like a lullaby for his son, but it's not a traditional lullaby. He brings out a guitar and plays it, and it's just so good. So if you have a chance, check out YouTube, Oscar Isaac Hippopotamus song on Fallon. It's great. And of course he was beard free on that particular episode, but the singing made up for it. And there are other clips of him singing and other things. I was like, I never knew. It's like
Hugh Jackman. You just go, how did you get all of that?
All of the stuff
in one. You can do Broadway, and you're also Wolverine.
Come on, man.
The range is just unreal.
But yeah, check it. I'm going to go back to the rent-free song in my head, Oscar Isaac's Hippopotamus song. You got to check it out, and then text me and let me know what you think about it.
Yeah.
John, that's it. That's our Fast Five, and that's the show. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. I've loved this so much.
I really appreciate it. If folks want to keep up with you, are you on any of the social medias that folks can keep up with John Hosmer?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram at John Hosmer. It's private, but if I know you, I'll accept. I'm just not like super involved on social media. I'm on LinkedIn a lot though. That's my job. So I'm very active and super involved in LinkedIn. So if you're a software engineer looking for a job and you want to move to Boise, let me know. But cool. LinkedIn and Instagram, that's about it for me. There's not a lot of John Hosmers out there, so I'm not too hard to find in the few places I am online.
Well, I'll put your links in the show notes as well, so folks do want to try and reach out, or maybe there's a software engineer that's listening that wants to move to Boise. Apparently it's amazing. I mean, just for the sheer fact that you're there. Just for the fact that you are there, the world's most interesting man, John Hosmer. Thank you so much for being here with me. I really appreciate it, buddy. Yeah,
thanks so much, Rob. It was a huge pleasure.
Absolutely. And thank you for listening. If you would like to support this podcast, consider going to chewingthefatbr.com and buying me a coffee. I really would appreciate it. Of course, wherever you listen to your podcast, there are links in the show notes. And then also you can check out the links in the bio. And while you're there, I do have the Thanksgiving giveaway that is up right now. That end date is coming up on Monday the 22nd. I would love to be able to share some things from Augusta with you. So if you'd like to enter, you can do that as well. And as always, I look forward to the next time we have to sit a spell and chew the fat.